What does getting smoked feel like? In this video, that is the topic I'll be focusing on, and in fact, I got smoked this morning along with the rest of my cadets here at Carroll's ROTC program for doing the following. So, if you are not already familiar, getting smoked is a punishment exercise or exercises that your NCO, in our case sergeant, ends up administering to us, and I'll get to what the exercises were, but in essence it means that there was some sort of breakdown in organization, of execution, of planning, or even of back talking to sergeant that could all result in all of us getting smoked. So this morning it was kind of on the threes level where there was some planning malfunctioning, there was a lot of miscommunication, some people didn't show up to PT, so that's a big red flag right there, and we had a lot of moving parts that our sergeant was just not having it. So after our a little over 3 mile run for actual PT, at about 40 minutes into it, after that run, he ended up having us run up to Guad Hill. And so on Carroll, all the sports athletes, etc., they all fear Guad Hill. Those two words bring lots of suffering and pain in connotation with it. And the reason why is because it's this pretty steep but relatively short hill here on campus that punishment exercises are performed on. So our sergeant had us run after completing our 3 mile run, doing 30-minute sprints, 60-second jogs, and then jogging some of the parts separate. So some people are pretty tired, other of us were not extremely exhausted, but we still did the punishment exercise, the smoking session, to begin. So he has to run up to the top of Guad Hill, and here we are breathing somewhat heavily, and he has to jog down to the bottom of the hill. So we're like, oh great, here we are getting smoked. And then he says go. So we sprint up the hill as fast as possible till we get to the top. Once at the top, he says, front lean, rest position, move. That's when we know the smoke session is about to begin. So we all get into a push-up position. When we go down, we say, attention detail. Up, teamwork is key. And we all say that in unison. So when sergeant yells, down, we go, attention detail. Up, teamwork is key. And that's the push-up kind of repeat that we do during a smoking session. Okay, so recapping there, while we go down, then up, do several push-ups. All in unison, of course, at the top of the hill, and then he'd say recover. So once we recover, we stand up, jog back down the hill, and repeat that for several iterations. And by the end of that, you're feeling pretty exhausted. We had a push-up exercise on Tuesday, 2 days ago, and so we were already feeling it. So doing push-ups for the smoke session was doubly as brutal as it should have been. So once that happened, and we're all pretty tired, he then decided to pull a twist on us and have us then go up Guad Hill in very interesting ways. So the first one was a bear crawl. We had to bear crawl on all fours up Guad Hill, which is a killer for your shoulders, kind of delts, and legs too. So that one is like a full body exercise up the hill. Second one was backwards shuttle runs, so where we completely run up the hill backwards, calf killer. And then the last one was where we do shuffles up and back, and then we finished one more with just a sprint up, sprint down, and then of course push-ups at the very top. So that was one half of our smoke session this morning. It doesn't end there. So by the end, pretty tired, some of us maybe feeling a little sick, but you end up jogging all the way back to the Hack, which is our gym on campus. We go in, and then we all form in a circle. And so here we're like, oh great, what sergeant got planned now? So we're waiting there. And he ends up having the two leaders who are most responsible for us today stand in the center of the circle. And he had all of us get into a plank position. It was a plank. So we started holding a plank, and he asked questions to the leadership about what went wrong. And as long as they took responding to it, we had to hold the plank. Unfortunately, their communication was somewhat slow and not very succinct, so we were holding a plank pretty long, and then once they were finished explaining what happened and what needed to be improved, we still held a plank until we maxed the PT test. So the ACFT has a max time of 3 minutes and 40-second plank, and that's how long we held it here, after also doing core exercises on Tuesday. So a lot of us really exhausted by now, really struggling, and that was the most brutal for me because on the Hack's floor it's this laminate type material on the basketball court, so there's not great friction, and so you slide out, so you end up exerting more energy and force just to keep your body straight, really struggling with the core that's already sore from a few days ago, and then your lower back starts to feel it after the run. So your whole body is just there shaking for that 3 minutes and 40 seconds while you have the leaders have to explain what went wrong. You have Sergeant there pretty furious, and then he said relax. We all collapse. And then I was hoping that the smoking session was complete. Didn't know if he had anything else planned since we still had a few more minutes before our PT session was over. Before he said get your pen and paper, which means that we got to cool down and then take announcements before we left. So the main two things, those quad hill sprints and plank, were the smoking session along with push-ups intermixed between them. It was brutal because of the pre-exercises which we did previous days, which made this one a lot harder. But overall, it wasn't a terrible smoking session. So I hope that helps explain to you guys what smoking means, what exercises are involved, depending on your sergeant. Last year we ended up having to hold a 10-minute wall sit, which of course none of us were able to hold to completion. A lot of us ended up having to stand up against the wall and then sit back down, but it was 10 minutes continuous, as much as we could do. Absolutely quad destroyer. And then I think we also did push-ups after that too, and sometimes they'll just have you hold down and then you're waiting for up and you're just holding it, and it's brutal. So that is a smoking session here in ROTC, with the objective of getting us to be more organized in the future. Us as MS2s and the lower cadets, we are still needing to ask more questions, so then it falls on the 3s and 4s to really explain what their plan is, who's in charge, what the organization needs to be improved, and up to sergeant standards, because those are the Army standards. And here we are training to be second lieutenant officers. So we have a lot of responsibility that will be put on us. So smoking sessions are ultimately meant to help direct our energy and direct our motivation towards pursuing that leadership role. And with that, ad meliora, toward better things.